I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Jody Dahrouge. He's a geologist and the president of Dahrouge Geological. Thank you so much for joining me online today. Great to have you here.
Oh, great to see you. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, really excited to be talking with you today. And where I thought we could start is just learning about your background in the resource sector, how you got into it and started doing what you're doing.
Well, I probably got started as a geologist or in the industry because of my father. He used to build winter roads in the Arctic to Great Slave Lake or Great Bear Lake, to the uranium mines, to lead zinc silver mines up in the Hattie Valley in the Northwest Territories. And I remember as a 5 or 6 year old kid, this Australia would come back with this full beard and these fantastic stories every winter. And, yeah, I quickly became fascinated with the treasure hunts he was participating in. So that's roughly why I got started, I would say.
I love that background. I also thought, so if you could give us a bit of an idea of some of your early stage discoveries that you've made, because people probably heard your name, or if they haven't, they probably heard the names of some of the discoveries and might not know that you're behind them. So what can you tell me about that?
Some of the first discoveries I've been involved with were as a director of Commerce Resources. We staked a number of rare earth projects, especially metals projects, be it a number around Blue River, Valemont area, which led to the discovery of the fur carbonatites. They were already pre-existing carbonatites in the area, and we just basically expanded on them, found some more. That led us eventually to the Eldor project in Quebec near the community of Kuujjuaq, and we discovered the Ashram rare earth deposit there. Discoveries are not one person, they're a team. They're the people who raise the money, the people who have the idea, the people who go out and do the work. So I just want to maybe acknowledge everybody in the process that these are all team efforts. And the Ashram that's a beautiful project. It's a little remote, but it was discovered, perhaps 10 plus years ago now. And we originally started looking at that project because it was one of the largest carbonatites we've ever seen, certainly the largest carbonatite I'm aware of in Canada. And really just scratching the surface to this day, despite having gone back repeatedly over and over and over. There's niobium zones, there are rare earth zones, there's a resource that we put together of, I don't remember the exact grade, but it's say 200 million tons of approaching 2% rare earths. As Dave Hodge, who up until recently was CEO of Commerce Resources, as Dave Hodge always used to say, this is the grocery store of projects. There's something down everywhere. So those are some of the earliest discoveries. We've been involved in the uranium sector in the Athabasca Basin. A fellow named Devron Hawa came to me when I don't know if it was when he started Strathmore or several years after he started Strathmore Minerals, and he was looking to put together uranium projects in Canada. And very quickly, I worked with David Miller, who I believe was his VP Exploration at the time, and we had staked the largest land package in the Athabasca Basin at one time. And so the projects that we staked, the ideas we generated, they eventually led to projects such as the J Zone, which is apparently named after me, adjacent to the Rough Rider discovery, which eventually led to Hathor's buyout. And that's in the Eastern Basin. Darren Smith, actually, who is VP of Patriot Battery Metals at the moment, he had staked a Patterson Lake South project, which eventually led to that entire area play and the discovery of Arrow, Patterson Lake South, and Neil McCollum, who also was involved in generating projects with myself. So going back quite a ways, we're quite a team, actually. We had quite a few discoveries that we're either responsible for or staged or been involved in the process somehow. Again, it's always a team that is involved in these discoveries. And the latest one there is Fission 3, of course, has made that Patterson Lake North discovery, which seems very impressive.
Okay, thank you for sharing all of that. I think that's a really good context, and I appreciate the focus on teamwork. I think that's really important to emphasize here. So, we've heard a little bit about your background making discoveries, and you started to mention Patriot battery metals. I think that definitely people have probably heard that name. I wondered if you could speak a little bit about that discovery and your involvement there up in James Bay in Quebec and what's going on now with kind of a little bit of lithium rush that we're seeing up there.
Well, that discovery came about 2015 to 2016. We started looking for interest for spodumene pegmatites on our own. One of the first ones we staked was a project called Hidden Lake in the Northwest Territories. It was just about 40 kilometers east of Yellowknife on the highway. And then we acquired several projects in northern Quebec. Patriot battery metals discovery, that particular discovery was based on, we were reviewing the area because that particular greenstone was open, or at least a good chunk of it was open. And Neil McCallum was doing research, and he found reference to spodumene in an outcrop. I think it was a old assessment report by Virginia Gold. So we sent out a team before we even staged it to go sit on top of that outcrop. And it was apparently the helicopter was literally on fumes, 5 more minutes, and they would have had to turn around. And they land on the outcrop, they look down, and there's spodumene everywhere. And that's the CV1 outcrop. Hence, they started naming these outcrops CV1, so for Corvette 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in order they discovered them. I'm not sure what they're up to, but I'm sure it's probably in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. And so eventually, after sampling, my son's a geologist, and I think he was a student at the time on that trip. And what they had done is they had channel sampled across it. We received the results, and the assays were pretty impressive. But with the helicopter, you could kind of see a series of outcrops on trend. And so we decided so eventually we vended all these projects, Hidden Lake, one called Pontax, Lac de Barrel, Corvette, into 92 resources, which eventually became Patriot battery metals. And those projects, unfortunately, they sat, like the Quebec project, sat fairly idle for a long period of time, just because there was a burst of interest in lithium in about 2016-17. We had done some work at Hidden Lake in the Northwest Territories, channel sampling, drilling, returned great results, but the market wasn't interested, and so you have to go where the market is telling you to go. We eventually came back to that area. I don't remember the exact year, say 2017, 18. I remember John Kaiser had written up a company called Midland, which made a really interesting copper discovery that completely parallels the Patriot battery metals pegmatite trend, but about a kilometer or 2 kilometers further north. And so that copper discovery got a lot of interest when they had done a joint venture, I believe, with BHP. And we went back there. We were looking for copper ourselves. We all wanted to go look at the lithium pegmatites, but Adrian had his mind set on copper because that's what everybody else in the area was looking for. And eventually, we finally got back to the CV1, CV5 outcrops and drilled them. And I remember when you went to drill CV1, CV5 in anticipation, you're always looking at it thinking, well, these are all small pearls or pods, pearls on a string or pods. And I was thinking maybe we're going to end up with a project that looks like critical rare earths, or if we're lucky, Nemaska. And the resource isn't published yet, and I anticipate we're probably a month away from that. But it's looking incredibly, incredibly good, I would say.
Okay, so the reason I ask about that one is to give us an idea of all the work that goes into exploration. Making the discovery is not the end of the process, right? So you do all of this work. You may decide to vend the property to a company. You may decide to stay involved with that company or not. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about your process and how you go through all of those steps.
We very much are involved in the very earliest stages of project generation, where you can actually go and stake mineral tenure that's on open ground. I'm not entirely sure why we started. We start at that very early level, but we do, and that typically involves several of us sitting around a table at the office discussing ideas, which commodity is the world going to need in the next few years? Where are the geologic conditions ripe for that commodity? Uranium, for instance. I mean, we are in Alberta. The Athabasca Basin is just to the north of us in Saskatchewan, Alberta. So looking at that, that's a fairly easy connection to make. Gee, we should look, in northern Saskatchewan for uranium. And so we'll sit around, we'll start ordering assessment reports, we'll dig up scientific publications. Every province has a geologic survey, pretty much. Start going through that literature, see what makes a good deposit. What are the, sort of similar characteristics from project to project to project, and what areas might be underexplored for reasons that are unknown. They have the right geology, but very little exploration dollars are spent there. And then that often leads, you see a showing, or you see some alteration or something that suggests, hey, there could be something here that's worthy of further investigation. So, in maybe 1 out of 10 projects, we'll cut the mustard, so to speak, so that we decide, hey, let's go stake a claim on that. Then once we have the mineral tenure secured, we'll send crews out on our own dime, see what we can dig up. Is there anything really obvious? Like the Patriot, like the CV1 outcrop at the Corvette. We sent out crews, and is there anything real near it? And once we knew we had something real, that's when we transacted it with 92 resources. So, from the surface sampling, the identification, you got a project, then you start doing, and each geologic setting is different. In uranium exploration, oftentimes you need a lot of geophysical methods to help target the drill, to let you know if you need to do some geophysics or maybe back that up with geochemistry. There's certain geochemical surveys that work, the uranium can, and, at Cigar Lake, for instance, the Athabasca Basin typically has 1 or 2 parts per million or less uranium in the sandstone, but above Cigar Lake, you get 5 ppm uranium in the sandstone column. So if you can identify the right coincidence of geophysics and the right coincidence of geochemistry, then you drill. And with some luck, you find something really good, or you're really disappointed.
Okay, so investors in the resource sector, I think everybody knows how rare it is for a discovery to actually advance into becoming a mine. And we do have a lot of followers who are interested in those early stage exploration stories. I'm wondering if you could talk about some red and green flags that investors could look for when they're trying to evaluate what these companies are doing.
Well, like everybody else, I started playing in the stock market when I was 10. My dad used to play little penny stocks, and I happened along with him. I think I had like $300 or $400 worth of my birthday money saved up. I invested it. I lost it all. He wouldn't replace it, no matter how much I begged. And it was a very good lesson. And so, things that you look for in junior companies, project is very important. Who management is very important. The financial wherewithal of that company is important. So sometimes I'll just invest in a company that might not have assets, but it's got money and it's got a good management team or people I know or trust. And so I'm going to put some money here because I know they're looking for a project, and I know eventually they're going to find something that the market's probably going to be interested in. These days in the James Bay district, for instance, kind of reminds me a little bit about the diamond exploration days when people would find kimberlites and the market get really excited and the stock would shoot up. And then, after a while they realized, well, you need diamonds, right? So there was a lot of kimberlites found that had no diamonds, and it didn't warrant the meteoric rise in the share price. So pegmatite exploration these days, I think, is quite a bit the same. A lot of companies have pegmatites, but if they don't have spodumene, they're not necessarily going to have, they're not going to have lithium. You need spodumene. Perhaps you have a little bit of lepidolite or other lithium-bearing minerals that give you good indication. Historically, what we look for when we're reading the old assessment reports, we look for a mineral like this called tourmaline. I don't know if you could see that, but tourmaline is one of the minerals that often will occur in spodumene pegmatites, typically along the margins. Other things we look for different kinds of feldspar that are described, because feldspar and spodumene are very difficult to tell apart. So, as an investor, I'd look for a pegmatite. If they have spodumene, I mean, that should rank above anything else. And then I try and ascertain what's the scale of that project. Myself as an investor, I'll go look on Google Earth. There's, Bing Maps. There's we go here. There's so many websites with satellite images that you can zero in on somebody's discovery or reported discovery, see if it looks like it has scale, if it's in the right setting. I'll go download the geology or read about the geology of an area. I know that's easy to say, but one thing to look for is spodumene-bearing pegmatites tend to prefer older Archean rocks. They tend to prefer Archean greenstone belts, which are just mafic volcanic rocks. I like to use Japan as an example of what that looks like in a modern context. So if your pegmatites are in greenstones and they have spodumene and they look like they have size and the market cap's still fairly low and the company has money in the bank, I would put money there and bet that eventually that's going to turn into something more valuable that the market's not appreciating.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I think we've gotten kind of a taste of the regions and commodities that you're interested in right now. But if there are any other points that you would add on that topic, that would be great to go over.
So a lot of we know the green energy transition is coming. I personally, I don't believe that it's going to be as rapid as people think. I think there's a lack of the commodities or available commodities at a reasonable price to facilitate as rapid a transition as the governments may want to see. And simple physics will necessitate that we still use hydrocarbons way into the future. That said, things that can make the rapid transition commodities, we look for uranium. Uranium's seen a bit of a resurgence with a few new discoveries, like F3's discovery at Patterson Lake North, or some of the other discoveries around the Athabasca Basin. Cameco share price is doing fantastic, and uranium prices creeping up higher and higher and higher. So I'm interested in uranium. I like rare earths, neodymium, transneodymium. There's this, of the 17 rare earths, there's 3 or 4 that are utilized in permanent batteries, which are essential in electric engines, or the quality of electric engines. And rare earths they're maybe not as rare as people think, but typically when you find a rare earth project, you find a metallurgical nightmare. So they're a good project with good ability, good mineralogy, and ability to process. Those are difficult to find. Historically, Baonovo in China, that project has produced significant rare earths from the mineral bastnäsite, which is in a carbonatite. Other rare earth minerals like monazite. So if you're interested in looking at rare earths, mineralogy is key. Some of the best lowest cost producers of rare earths were the South China clays, and those South China clays were an ionic clay, where the rare earths were bound with a weak ionic charge that allowed the cheap and readily recoverable rare earth minerals. And so there's been a number of, particularly Australian companies, looking around the world for ionic clays, whether there's some big projects that are really intriguing in Brazil. There's some in Chile. Of course, there's some in Australia. One recent discovery that I've been following is a fantastic niobium discovery in Australia. We've looked for niobium for many years. One of the discoveries we've been involved in, rediscovery, is Elk Creek in Montana, owned by Niocorp. That is one of the higher grade deposits around the world. And then recently in Australia, there's been another one, a little bit higher grade than that that's been discovered. So I find it really intriguing that suddenly there's all these discoveries in specialty metals. And I guess it's probably predicated on the demand for those metals that people are just starting to get out there and start spending more dollars on these ideas.
Right. And that kind of ties into the question I wanted to ask next, which is if you have any other trends in exploration that you would want to mention. I think a lot of the things that I hear frequently are that major miners aren't spending a lot of money on exploration. There's a lack of funding from other areas. Are there any other points that you would mention on exploration?
As a Canadian, the trend that I find frustrating is that there's a lot of good people with great projects, um, but for some reason, it's very difficult to raise money in Canada compared to Australia or perhaps the United States. The Australians, they're way ahead of the game on lithium discoveries. West Australia has a number of fantastic mines and deposits, discoveries that are producing. And I think it's just very frustrating to see how difficult it is for explorers to raise money in this country. And it shouldn't be that way. When I first started in the industry, I mean, we were looked at in Canada as the go-to country for exploration, and I think we're falling behind quite rapidly. And whether it's regulations, difficulty, or time frames to permit a discovery, um, I'm not entirely sure as the reason for that. Uh, but I think it's up to a lot of the regulators and a lot of the industry to, try and look inwards perhaps as to what can we do to facilitate the rapid development of our green energy resources before we're not even in the game.
Right. And, the flip side of that is I guess we are seeing Australians seem to spread their net wider, right? They're coming over to Canada, they're coming over to other jurisdictions. Any other comments you would add on that note?
Yeah, and they're not risk adverse. They look at a discovery and they jump in with both feet. They fund it. Um, one of the things that Australia, and I don't know um, what role this plays, but I believe on a capital gains front, so on a taxation front, you have to hold your shares for 12 months before you get that tax benefit. And so they're willing to pick a good idea and stick with it and make sure it works. So that helps. I don't shorting stocks. I don't think you can short as readily on the ASX as you can on the TSX. I think that's a real big problem for smaller companies that are, trying to raise money, trying to finance. Um, I like the way their capital markets are structured. That if you do a significant financing, you have to go through this halt process and get shareholder approval. I like that going back to the shareholders at times. Um, yeah, that's there's differences. What do we do better? I'm not sure at the moment. You know, we have great geology just like Australia, and I think eventually we're going to catch up and we'll figure out, how to play the game again. But
Hopefully we do. Hopefully soon. All right. This has been really informative. As we're wrapping up, I wondered if you had any final thoughts that you would want to share with investors.
yeah, I'm really, I bet I'm just like all other investors, frustrated by forest fires in James Bay. But you know what? The explorationists are going to get back out there. Right at the moment, there's a number of forest fires, and we do know that Quebec is subject to periodic bouts of significant rain. And once those rains come, you're going to see people working faster and harder than ever, looking to make discovery across the spectrum, whether it's for spodumene pegmatites or rare metals or iron ore occurrences or gold. I think Quebec's going to see a flurry of activity again. Um, James Bay got a lot of the attention because of the Patriot discovery, of course. And I think in the meantime, explorers are now turning their attention to the Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Ontario, other jurisdictions where you can make discoveries. And It didn't stop exploration; it slowed it down. But I think it allowed us to refocus and recognize that this is a pretty big country, pretty vast potential.
Okay, I think that's a nice place to wrap up on. Thank you so much for coming on to talk today. It was really great to hear all these ideas from you.
It was great chatting with you. Thanks, appreciate it.
Really, no problem. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing East Network, and this is Jody Dahrouge. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a comment below. We'll see you next time.